His name is Terry Rich. He was a former Marine Corps instructor. One day, he was riding his bike to Shelby Springs, planning to pay his cousin's bail. Out of nowhere, he was hit by a police car. The officers quickly made up a reason, saying someone had reported a stolen bicycle and suspected his bike was the one. Terry told them his bike wasn't stolen, but one of the officers checked his information and found no criminal record. But they weren't done. They continued searching his backpack and found $36,000 in cash. Terry explained that the money was from legitimate sources, $10,000 for his cousin's bail, and the rest was meant to buy a used pickup truck. The officer casually asked what his cousin had been arrested for. Terry replied that his cousin was arrested for marijuana possession. Upon hearing this, the officer quickly changed his tune, saying that because his cousin was involved in drugs, they suspected the money was drug money and that they were seizing it. Terry objected, saying it was from his restaurant earnings. But the officer ignored his explanation. He was told that within 30 days, he'd receive a document regarding the lawsuit for this money. If Terry contested it to get the money back, they would arrest him with a warrant. If he didn't contest it, the court would rule in favor of the police, and Terry would face no trouble. Terry realized he was dealing with corrupt officers, but thinking of his cousin still in jail, he decided not to argue. He went straight to the courthouse, but the judge told him that without bail money, he couldn't bail his cousin out. Terry showed the receipt from the police, but the judge only cared about the cash. Terry's anxious behavior caught the attention of a lawyer, Summer. She introduced herself and told him the police chief was exploiting legal loopholes. Although there was a chance to recover the money through a lawsuit, such cases took a long time. She advised Terry to gather $10,000 for the bail, or his cousin might be sent to state prison, making the process much harder. Terry understood Summer's point. The immediate priority was getting the bail money. The next morning, he went to the police station and reported a robbery. Jessica, the officer on duty, asked for a description of the thief. Terry said he didn't see the person's badge number. That made Jessica suspicious. She stepped out for a moment. Soon, one of the officers who had arrested Terry, Marston, approached. He threatened Terry to leave immediately, saying he was reporting a false crime and could face legal consequences. Just then, Police Chief Sandy arrived. After figuring out the situation, he said Terry should have faced legal penalties, but since it was his first time, he would let it slide and only confiscate the money. Sandy warned Terry that if he interfered with the police again, he would face serious charges. At that point, Terry realized the entire police department was corrupt, but for the sake of his cousin, he decided to comply. He told Sandy he only needed $10,000 for the bail, and the rest of the money was theirs, as long as they didn't cause more trouble. Sandy hesitated but agreed, asking Terry to come back at 9 a.m. on Monday, when he would arrange for him to meet his cousin. When Monday arrived, Terry showed up at the police station at the agreed time, only to find his cousin already being loaded onto a bus to state prison. Sandy claimed it was because Terry was late. Terry immediately started chasing after the bus. He managed to catch up and told his cousin to lay low in prison, assuring him that he would find a way to bail him out. Unable to recover the money from the police, Terry called his restaurant partner to borrow $10,000, only to learn the police had sealed the restaurant and taken the safe. Terry realized that Sandy had planned the meeting for Monday to investigate him over the weekend, and sealing the restaurant was a warning. With no other options, Terry went to find Summer. She was shocked when she heard about his cousin being taken away, but quickly composed herself. She told Terry to leave immediately because she was fighting for custody of her daughter and couldn't afford any complications. However, she soon followed him out the back door. She told Terry she had looked through several case files, noticing that the bail amounts for smaller cases were unusually high, yet none of those cases had gone to trial. This seemed suspicious. She suspected someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. She urged Terry to keep gathering money while she prepared his cousin's documents. As soon as he paid, she would sign the bail papers and get his cousin out. Terry understood and thought for a long time before deciding to go back to the police station. Jessica noticed Terry outside the station again. Sandy immediately pulled out his gun, ready to force Terry away. At the same time, the police finally discovered encrypted information on Terry. It turned out he was a former Marine Corps instructor with extensive combat experience. The officers rushed out and warned Sandy to stay away from Terry. Sandy drew his weapon, but before he could shoot, Terry disarmed him. Terry quickly took Sandy into custody and subdued another officer. He brought both of them back to the police station, ordering Jessica to tie them to chairs. Then he threatened her to open the warehouse. To his surprise, inside the warehouse, there was not only a large amount of cash, but also various weapons and equipment. Jessica handed him the money, but Terry insisted he only needed $10,000. The rest was for Sandy. Terry then made Jessica perform a scene for the other officers, ensuring his safe departure from the station. He quickly went to the courthouse, paid the bail, and Summer had his cousin's documents ready. Getting the judge's signature swiftly, Summer sent the paperwork to state prison in hopes of getting his cousin out as soon as possible. But just then, a large group of officers arrived. Surrounding Terry, they shot him with an electric dart. He tore the dart off in pain and was immediately tackled to the ground. When he woke up, Sandy dragged him out of the police station. Sandy threw his money on the ground, saying he had arranged with a used car dealer that Terry could buy the truck he wanted for $10,000. He also told Terry some bad news. His cousin had been stabbed in prison and was being sent to the hospital.
I fucking told you!
Sandy gave Terry two choices: take the money and leave forever, or fight them, but face 30 years in prison. Faced with this, Terry had no choice but to accept. When he next saw his cousin, he had already died in the hospital. Terry was furious, but he knew the police wouldn't deliver justice. Summer drove him out of town. The whole way, police cars followed them. They didn't stop following until Terry had completely left town. He thought he'd never return, but unexpectedly, Summer, who had helped him, became a target for revenge. Someone injected her with drugs while she was asleep. Summer panicked, so she called Terry. By the time he arrived, he found Summer splashing cold water on herself. She knew that if she went to the hospital, she'd be reported, and she would lose her job in court. Her chances of gaining custody of her daughter would vanish. So she had to calm herself down in this way. The next day, Summer arrived at the office, only to be told by the judge that she had to take a drug test. It turns out that early that morning, the court had received an anonymous tip about Summer using drugs. Summer vehemently denied it, but the judge insisted she take the test. After all her hard work, she was on the verge of losing custody of her daughter. Summer completely broke down. Meanwhile, after leaving Summer's house, Terry was quickly stopped by a police officer. Terry said he had urgent matters to deal with, which was why he had to return to town. The officer, however, thought Terry was provoking him, so he threw a gun into Terry's car and shot at him. But Terry, using his combat skills, quickly disarmed the officer, grabbed his stun gun, and shot back at the officer, knocking him out. Another officer saw this and immediately shot at Terry. Luckily, Terry managed to escape. On the other side, Summer was also being followed by the police, and it was clear they were sending her a warning. Summer and Terry met at a restaurant, where the owner quickly treated Terry's injuries. Then they began to strategize. This group had provoked Terry too many times. He had had enough of them. This time, he was going to use strong measures to bring them to justice. They snuck into the judge's house, and from him, they finally learned the truth. The police department's expenses had almost bankrupted the town. The state prosecutor had given them an ultimatum: either modernize and reform the police department within a year, or everyone would be fired. In order to make money, the police were intentionally holding suspects in custody beyond 90 days, because body cam footage had to be kept for 90 days. After that, the footage would be deleted. They also raised the bail amounts to extract large sums of money from suspects. The worst part was that the suspects didn't have a public defender, so they had no way of contesting it. And the police department had complete control. The court had hidden the body cam footage in a secret archive. This meant that if the footage was released, the police department's money-making scheme would be exposed. After learning the location of the SD cards, they immediately took action. They found the SD cards quickly, but at that moment, Summer said she needed to get something. They agreed to meet at the back door, but just as she was picking up her urine sample, patrolling officers spotted her, and she was arrested on the spot. When Terry saw Summer about to be taken away, he didn't think twice and rammed his car into the police. Though he couldn't save Summer, he managed to grab one officer. Then he called Sandy. He was going to use the officer and the SD card to exchange for Summer's release. Sandy agreed to the deal without hesitation. They arranged to meet at a place called Reverse Ridge, but Sandy had sent people there with weapons to ambush them. He didn't care about the officer's life. He intended to fully understand Terry. What he didn't expect was that Terry never went to the meeting spot. Instead, Terry appeared outside the police station. He entered the station and shot Sandy, but not with bullets, only rubber bullets. He quickly retrieved the body cam footage. At that point, the police had already surrounded the station. He handed the SD card he had just gotten to Jessica, hoping she would transfer the files to the state police. He also gave her a gun for self-defense, but he made a mistake. Jessica wasn't Summer's informant. After she got the gun, she pointed the muzzle at him and forced him to walk outside. Just then, her colleagues arrived to back her up. Maston suggested killing Terry on the spot. They already had proof of his unlawful entry, so shooting him wouldn't be an issue. But another officer, Evan, disagreed. He thought they didn't need to escalate things to murder. While they were arguing, Sandy, who had recovered, stepped out. He signaled Maston to shoot Evan. Evan was shot and collapsed to the ground. Sandy then stepped on his hand. Sandy said they shouldn't fight among themselves anymore. It was time to take care of Terry. At this point, Terry knew they intended to kill him. He quickly pulled Evan over to shield him and dragged him behind a car. The others immediately opened fire, but they seriously underestimated Terry's abilities. Though he didn't kill any of them, he knocked them all down. Afterwards, he found Summer's car and drove away from the station. However, the police wouldn't let him go that easily. They chased him, shooting out his tires. By now, a large backup force from the state police had arrived. Sandy used the radio to tell the state police that the car was full of armed criminals and ordered them to open fire. Terry and his group panicked. Then, in a surprising move, Jessica, who had been silent until then, drove her car straight into Sandy's vehicle. This time, she chose to stand on the side of justice. There was an incident where officers were injured, and they had to call in an escort vehicle for the police. In the end, Terry, with state police escort, managed to get to the hospital. He rushed Summer inside, then immediately grabbed the axe to remove the police car's dashcam. He held it tightly in his arms. This was the evidence of Sandy's group's crimes. He was determined to send these people to jail.